I will go ahead and get started. I actually titled this Stronger, Winning at Life with Chronic Migraine. And I love questions, so feel free to ask questions. I hope, as I said, I want everyone to get something out of this. So I want you to ask away. Really quickly, I will say something. Sorry, my screen just did something funny, so forgive me while I fix it. Something happened where all of you disappeared, and I like to see you a little bit if I can, at least. No, it's not gonna let me. Fine. My first memory was when I was 3 or 4 at preschool. My preschool had no shade. There were no trees. And I was sitting in the preschool swing, and I had a migraine and the sun was beating down on my head. And the strange thing about my particular preschool was that it had like a grasshopper infestation, and they were everywhere, seriously everywhere. And I really felt that the grasshoppers had headaches and that the sun was making it worse. And I specifically remember picking up all the grasshoppers that I could and putting them under the preschool patio so they would be protected from the sun and their head wouldn't hurt so bad. And that is the very first thing I remember. And I never really had a day, in my memory at least, without some level of migraine after that. And so I seem to, gosh, I'm like Marius, I'm having some difficulties. So forgive me for 1 second. I'm going to stop sharing for a second while I. Okay, thank you. Forgive me. So why do I do what I do? So I had chronic daily migraine from around the age of 4 to the age of 30, meaning I really had no pain-free memory. This caused me to have something called complex regional pain syndrome. If you haven't heard of that, it's like a burning fire all the way down to your bones, even your bone marrow. And I don't know at what age that part began, but it was definitely unremitting, never stopped by the time I was 14, and it was all down my face, neck, and down into my right arm. I have facial bone changes from the CRPS, and I never developed roots in some of my teeth because of it. And this is all thanks to the migraine, is really what triggered all this stuff to happen in my body. I just show this really quick to kind of show you what happened throughout life, some of the mistakes I made and how I approached my migraine disease. I was a competitive swimmer for a very long time. And I had realized early on that exercise helped my pain. And I overdid it. Like you wouldn't believe. That's me with big arms in the front there. And you can almost see in my face as I got older, it started to fail. I used grit. I used pure grit to try and kill my pain. No one, I was told I didn't have a diagnosis. I was told I had sinus headaches. I didn't really, other than I had a suspicion it was really migraine because I had read about it. I didn't have any medicines. I didn't have any support. I didn't talk about my pain. I just swam morning and evening each day to try and kill the pain. And it was really the wrong way to go about it. It made me so much sicker. It caused me a lot of problems. And so I definitely did try a lot of strategies throughout my life that didn't work. So here's some more about my why. These are my 2 children. And these are my 2 children on migraine days. So this is another reason that I do what I do. My whole life, my whole career is dedicated to migraine. What is it that I do really quickly? This is my clinic door. I do see people with chronic or debilitating migraine. I am sort of an adjunct to their physician. In no way am I a replacement. I'll show you a little bit later. I sort of build rock walls against migraine. And I help people with their mentality. I see people that have not made it to someone like Dr. Berlea, who happens to work in my city, and they haven't found him yet, or they're with him, but they need help with some of the stuff that people like him don't have time to do. They don't sit with him, all day, for example, and I will spend hours with people to help them fight their migraine disease. So I'm also the podcast and webcast host for Heads Up, which is with the National Headache Foundation. And I wrote a graphic novel for kids, and I say adventurous adults because some adults just need something to focus on that's empowering during a migraine. And this is a graphic novel for people with migraine. And I write medical articles, and I'm the scientific liaison for the Association of Migraine Disorders. And then, of course, I have my Facebook group for people, especially with chronic migraine, but episodic too, called Migraine Nation, and that's on Facebook. So let's get to what I kind of do, and because it's kind of important to what I want to talk about today. I build like a personalized rock wall against migraine. And I think it's so important to think about it, because if you think of half of this rock wall of being medications, and the other half being, I hate the term lifestyle factors, because there's so many things. It's so much more than your diet, nutrition, exercise. It's just so many things about your life that you can alter around migraine. So that's the other half. But the thing that I think a lot of people don't totally think about is the mortar. The mortar that's holding all these rocks together is your mentality. And if you don't have the right migraine mentality, none of this is going to stay together. And so that's how I think about what I do with people as a strategist is I build these walls. We talk about medicines. We talk about which doctor to go to. We talk about the lifestyle factors, and then we talk about the mortar. So one thing I want to say is I do believe that starting a talk or a relationship with someone that you're talking to about their migraine by discussing mindset, or if they think you're only discussing mindset, is literally like having someone in front of you that's on fire, especially if they've had daily pain for a long time or daily migraine for a long time. And you might have a fire extinguisher somewhere in your office, or you might know where a fire extinguisher is. But instead of reaching for that fire extinguisher, you're just talking to them about their mind and think positive. And I think that's the worst thing you can do. And I really think that's what it feels like to people when they are like dying of pain and you're talking to them about mentality issues. So I want to make sure no one thinks I'm doing that today. That's why I say there is an entire rock wall. So we, in no way do we just say, think positive and you're going to be fine. That I don't believe that one bit. But migraine does make us feel like we lack control over our own lives. I do believe this is the job of migraine, is it brings your mind down so far that you can't fix yourself. It makes us feel like victims. It makes us bitter. We start to hate. It feels like the universe doesn't have anything good for us. We lose our joy, our hope. We wake up in the morning oftentimes just expecting negativity. If you've been in pain long enough, this will happen to you, especially if it's daily pain and you don't get a break. So I feel like it's the job of migraine to take your energy, your mentality, your focus, or your mood, and just sort of, if you imagine this line is your energy, etc., and your mentality, it obviously vacillates throughout the day or the week. It'll go up and down. But I believe it's the job of chronic migraine to just take it straight down eventually. And I think that when someone puts effort and energy into their focus and their mentality and their mood, there'll be vacillations, but you can get it to go sort of more like on a straight plane, right? So that it stays more stable and you're not going down. But what I really like to challenge people to do is sort of make it your daily job to maybe get it going up. And in a year, your health, your energy, your vitality, your focus will be in a better place than it is now. And in 2 years, it'll be in a better place. And you'd be amazed at how your health can follow where your energy and your focus and your mood goes. There's some rules to this. That some of the, right now, this is some stuff that's from Lindsay. And then there's most of the stuff I say is actually backed up by data and some really cool books that I can tell you about. Rule number one that I think is hugely important is don't compare yourself Don't compare yourself to other people with migraine, but especially don't compare yourself to healthy people. Something is building inside of you. This pain, this what you're going through, you're building a strength and a power, a resilience that someone without your disease is not building. You are becoming stronger. Honor that. Recognize that. Focus on that. Just because someone else got a promotion, finished school before you, is having an easier time than you, we don't compare ourselves to them. We focus on what's building inside of us. It's like if you see a Monet painting and you're looking at it this close, you're not seeing the whole picture. You got to step back. You're building something hugely important. So rule number 2 is strength versus anxiety and depression. Migraine builds 2 giant opposing forces in us. So what is it? 40% of us are depressed and 50% of us have anxiety when we have migraine. But it's also building this huge strength. And the daily decision is to pick which one to feed. So, is there a specific time of day that things start to kind of go bad for you mentally? Like after you've eaten breakfast and you're about to tackle your day and you're like, wow, I don't feel great. I'm overwhelmed. How am I going to hit this deadline? And you start to get anxious. If you can put that energy toward the strength that you have because you're overcoming this horrible thing every day, instead of toward that anxiety, just remember there's 2 things being built. Don't put the energy toward the anxiety and depression as much as possible. No, I'm not telling someone who has depression that they can fix this with their mind. No, there's medicines, there's all these things, but this is something you can work on in your head that does help. Rule number 3 is that without question, migraine changes you, and we have to decide how. If you really think about it, think about the easiest way to think about it is the really big ones, the ones that are just horrid and you're stuck in bed, if maybe just a day, but 3 days, a week, and you are just afterwards, you are not the same person you were when you first laid down. I'm sorry. And we have to make sure we're stronger at the end of that instead of weaker, because it's going to change you and you need to try and determine how it changes you. And I believe this because after 10 years of all those migraines changing you, you don't want to be weaker, you want to be stronger. I'm getting a call that I'm paranoid as hell and it's not. Okay, sorry. I'm like, am I frozen? So rule number 4 is that the prodrome and postdrome are real. Recognize this. And I almost feel lucky that I had an example of this last night. I couldn't even cook my dinner. I forgot half the things I was supposed to cook. And look, Alicia's looking at me like she's so ashamed. Alicia knows I can't cook hardly at all anyway, but I couldn't get anything together to cook dinner. And I felt like a moron, right? But don't think that way about yourself. I finally was like, oh no, I'm going to get a migraine tomorrow. This is what happens to me before I get one that's big, right? Even if you're someone that has one every day, you might recognize that, okay, this is what happens before I get a big one. And it's okay. This is not my fault. I'm not stupid. I'm not a failure. This is not good and it's okay. And this happens in up to 80% of migraine attacks. Recognize the symptoms that are related to your migraine. It's not your fault. You might be tired. You might be moody. You might be craving weird things, just in a bad mood and you can't concentrate. Recognize these things and don't blame yourself. So one of the things about the healing mindset that I wanted to point out, you blame yourself and other people teach you to blame yourself. It is not your fault. There's 44 genetic loci that contribute to migraine. You have a genetic tendency. It is not your fault that you got here. But in order to live successfully with migraine, I do believe you have to gain exceptional control over your mental, emotional, and lifestyle factors. We're talking like superhero level. You can't just live like everyone else, can't live like an average person. You have to gain control of your thoughts. You have to gain control of your lifestyle factors. And it is tiring. So you might have to rest more. than some other people. And this is all okay. This is the life we live. So these are the pillars of pain that there's data that backs this up. This isn't something I made up. And this is something I think it's important to learn. And the first one, although I made up the phrase pillar of pain, the first pillar of pain is that pain is made up of three components. And there's sensation, there's thought, there's emotion. So the sensation is, what does your pain feel like, right? You become aware of your pain, you become aware of what it feels like. And then what do you think of your pain? What is your perception of it? Does it suck? Does it feel like it's burning? Does it feel like it's throbbing? Does it feel like your eyeball's gonna pop out? You know, whatever that is. And then you will develop an emotion about it. That's automatic, subconscious and conscious. And you'll have feelings related to it. You'll feel sad, you'll feel mad, you will feel like a victim, you will feel all sorts of things. And there are different ways to intervene at the sensation, thought, and emotion level so that we don't get to the worst level of our migraine, so that we don't get to the chronified state. So let's talk about that. Pillar of pain number 2 is that our thoughts are nerve signals. So just think about this simple fact for a minute. You're hearing my voice and you're understanding what I'm saying. That is all nerve signals. Your pain is nerve signals. Every thought that goes through your head is as real as the pain you're feeling. So there are thoughts that are proven to chronify a pain state. Okay. And your brain uses perceived danger to decide how much pain you should be in and how long it should last. So this is something I, to this day, okay, I've been fighting migraine since I can remember. And to this day, I still try to stop this particular thought from going through my head when I am having one of my really bad attacks. My brain, subconscious level and conscious level, sits there and there's this phrase that goes to my head: I'm dying. Oh my God, I'm gonna die. I'm dying. I'm dying. And I really try to stop that. And I don't know that I've ever met someone with really, I've met some people that don't get pain with their migraine, and maybe they don't have that thought, but that thought passes through most people's brain. So these negative thoughts, as we're laying there, are the things that we want to stop. I use empowering movies. I use happy music. I use whatever I can get into my brain without the photophobia and phonophobia freaking me out, that is positive and that will bring a more positive thought instead of this, okay, I'm dying, this is awful. All these thoughts that are automatic and are in my subconscious and in my conscious brain. The pillar of pain number 3 is that emotions cause physical pain. So this is another place we can intervene. So they amplify your pain. So you're in pain, and then what happens? You're sad. You're mad you had to leave work. You are annoyed that your family doesn't understand, or that so-and-so doesn't understand. There are endless number of negative emotions that can happen related to the fact that you have a migraine, or that you constantly have a migraine that never goes away. And what happens is you will end up on a chronic pain or chronic migraine bicycle before you realize it, because the pain starts a little bit, right? And then your subconscious, you've got the sensation, you've got the emotion about it, you've got the negative thoughts about it, and you didn't even realize that this whole thing took off before your conscious mind even figured it out. And this is something to work on and work backwards on in your own mind. And you basically, the way I picture it is to stick a stick in the spokes of the chronic pain bicycle wheel. So some strategies that I love to talk about, and if you forget everything I said, which some things resonate with people and some things don't, so you're welcome to forget and remember whatever works for you. But I think this one is so important. I started my career in the breast cancer world. I used to work with breast cancer patients and talk to them all day. And what was weird about that was I had vomited sadly myself down to, I don't even want to say how much I weighed. There was a point I know I weighed about 108 pounds. It was sad. And I was sitting across from people in chemo who weighed more than me. And I was completely silent about my migraine disorder because no one would understand. I worked with people who were dying. No one wants to hear that I have a migraine. Nobody cared. And so I would watch them and think of how empowered breast cancer patients are. They are proud of their shaved heads. They dress in pink, and there are thousands of them on those walks. And this became so apparent to me. And I knew that it would help if we could all learn to take on that mentality. So think about the differences. People with breast cancer are known as survivors and warriors. People with migraine and chronic pain are often considered weak or anxious. People with breast cancer, they have identifiable markers of their disease. We don't have any markers or visible proof of our disease at all. People with breast cancer, the whole world knows it's serious. For us, no one understands and few people care. I shouldn't say no one, sorry, but few people really understand our disease. And I think possibly one of the most important ones, especially this time of year, if we're going to see our loved ones, is in breast cancer, our loved ones gather around them and support them usually. And with migraine or chronic pain, we just might be shunned by our loved ones if we try to explain our disease or if we talk about our disease. And so I think one of the most important tools that you can give yourself is to try and live your life and see your disease the way breast cancer patients see their disease. Bring that empowerment to yourself. I love that tool very much. And I think when I try to use this visual, because I think it's so interesting, I do think there is a bit of a myth out there. Everyone talks about the stigma that people with chronic migraine are weak. And I love to use this visual. When I wrote Super Zoe, the migraine hero, I can barely draw stick figures. So I had to go find an illustrator. And I spent forever trying to find an illustrator that would do this. And I would go around to them and I would be like, Super Zoe is tough. She's strong. She goes through more to get out of bed in the morning than most people go through all day. And I went through a few illustrators. And for the longest time, this was the strongest Super Zoe I got. She's cute, but this poor girl is not going to empower anybody. I'm sorry. I just couldn't get anyone to understand that this little girl with migraine was tough. And finally, one day I did, thank God, come across someone who was able to draw this Super Zoe who hopefully empowers people and looks strong. But it did take forever. And so I like to use that visual to say, don't embody if other people think your illness makes you weak. Do not embody that. You don't have to take on what they think. What they think is none of your business. Another strategy I like to use, I think I told you early on that I felt that the fact that I didn't have a pain-free memory might have served me a little bit. When I first started working with people who have migraine, I noticed this very obvious thing to me that I don't think I had. And it was that they were constantly beating their head against a wall, trying to get back to their pain-free memory. And I'm not even sure that it was entirely conscious. It was almost like a subconscious thing that went on. If they had a medicine that worked a little bit, they wouldn't even notice because it wasn't their pain-free memory. And so much misery was being caused by this pain-free memory they had. And one of the strategies that I sort of came up with was to combat this was to come up with a pain-free future, or at least a healthier future to focus on anytime you notice that you were just this pain-free memory was pulling your energy away. And so what I tell people to do is go to Pinterest. Don't follow Pinterest boards. You don't want images that you can't control in your mind that can depress you, but search for whatever it is you want. You want a cool new pair of glasses. You want to do yoga in the future. You want to be a runner. You want a new job. You want a different house. You want to be married to Jason Momoa. I don't care what it is. Search for it, cut it out, and put it in a PowerPoint presentation, and some people have 30 pages of a vision board of their future. This serves two purposes. You can make it when you're feeling down or feeling sick, you can work on it, and it helps distract you and keep your mood up. Or when you notice that your energy is going the wrong way, you can look at it. And it, I think, is a really, really good tool. Strategy 3 is throw out your pain scale. I believe in this a lot. Now, the caveat to this is you're going to need your pain scale sometimes. If you're a doctor, if you're trying a new medicine and your doctor is trying to see if your pain level on this medicine is going to go from a 6 to a 4, you obviously need to use your 1 to 10 pain scale and keep a record during that time. Sometimes in your medical record, if you're going to eventually have to apply for disability, et cetera, you are going to need to have record of where your pain level was. If you're not using it for those specific purposes, I believe it's so important to just kind of throw out your pain scale. And I'll tell you why. This, if you really think about it, I think this is what a lot of people do. You wake up in the morning and you're like, I'm at a 6. And then you go to work and you're like, God, now I'm at a 7. If I get to an 8, I don't think I can stay here. I'm going to have to leave. And what are you doing? You're spending your whole day focusing on your pain. And that is the last thing in the world that you should be doing. You should be focusing on anything but your pain, right? And so I personally believe that it helps people a lot to just have 3 things. You're either thriving, functional, or you're homebound or bedridden. And that's really all that matters. And there's a kid version of that I put in Super Zoe. The kids are either super, so-so, or bummer. And I think it helps people a lot to get through their day without focusing on their pain. Another strategy is exercise to beat kinesiophobia. 50% of people with migraine have kinesiophobia. I think Dr. Boulaya touched on this a little bit. I hate the definition of kinesiophobia. The official definition is that it's an irrational and debilitating fear of physical movement. I don't think there's anything irrational about it. I'm sorry, it hurts. I've been an athlete my whole life and it hurts. Once you have certain pain syndromes, you have to be very creative about what types of exercise you do, when you do it, how long you do it. I personally find this is one of the big things I do with people is I find ways for them to exercise because the exercise itself can help prevent the migraine, right? But you got to find the right one to do. I'm a yoga instructor and I cannot hold my arms up in certain positions for very long. And I've been trying to do it for 15 years. Okay. So there's a lot of things that involve upper body that I think are triggers for people with migraine. Some people are triggered by increases in heart rate, and there's a lot of really creative things you have to come up with for people like that. But so you find ways to move so that the kinesiophobia doesn't get worse and worse, and you have to be so creative about it. And I do think this is challenging, and I hate it when people minimize how challenging that is. Strategy 5 is to raise your emotional frequency, because it's just a fact. Migraine brings with it all the things that keep you from getting better, like depression and anxiety. It's the gift that keeps on giving in the wrong way. Thank you very much. You know, I'm in pain. Why don't you make me depressed too, so that I can hardly make myself feel better? So again, I am never going to minimize what depression does. I'm not going to be like, whoa, you're depressed. Boom. Just make yourself feel better. No, but a strategy that I find works with people is make a list like this of like the emotional states from great to terrible that you might be in. And throughout the day, check in and see where you're at. And if you find that you're sad, just try to get up to content. Make a list of the things that might help you: funny movie, music, exercise, breathe better, get up and move around if you've been sitting at your desk forever. Just try to get one level up. And it's surprising how if you do that for a month, you might find that the next month, when you check in, you're usually at content and you're looking to get to happy. And it is a surprisingly good tool to use. You're not trying to get from miserable to blissful by any means. You're just looking for like one little level of increase, and over time, you'd be surprised at what it does for mood. I wanted to throw out a little love for caregivers, whether you're a caregiver or we do have to take care of our caregivers, right? And this is the cup analogy. And you know how everyone talks about uh, you can't pour from an empty cup, right? Well, I really think, and I stole this from somewhere, and forgive me, I don't know where. So whoever I stole it from probably should tell me someday, because I don't know where I heard this years ago, but your cup should be overflowing. So, and I can tell the difference with my kids, my life, my work, when I'm pouring versus overflowing. You need to fill your cup so much as a caregiver or a person with migraine that you're overflowing onto your kids. You're overflowing onto the person or people you're taking care of. And that's really the only way to meet everyone's needs, including yourself. And when I give talks specifically to caregivers, I spend a lot of time talking about this, but it works. It's important for us as patients too, because most of us are also taking care of someone. And so I think it's such an important concept.
Hi, Lindsay.
Yeah.
We are running really
Okay.
behind on time,
Got
so
it.
if we can just wrap up a little bit, that would be great.
I can
Thank
skip
you.
that slide and I can actually just summarize. So the summary is that people with chronic migraine or chronic pain did not become that way because of any failure or inherent weakness on our part. And I think that's the most important thing to get into our minds. And we have to be superheroes at maintaining a healthy thought life, emotional state, and lifestyle. We didn't get here because we failed at that. We have to actually be sort of like superheroes at it, is sort of what I try to get across. So thank you. And there's my contact information.
Thank you so much. I think we all walked away with a lot of great points on how to take better care of ourselves and also our caregivers. So that was amazing. And I wish we had more time.